Hello everybody, welcome back to the Hobby Homestead. Today is garlic planting day for me. I'm in southwestern Ontario. We are in zone 6A now, and we've had several freezes so far, but the daytime highs are always well above freezing, like under 10 degrees Celsius, but still above freezing. Night times have been just hovering around freezing or just under. It's really the perfect time for planting garlic right now. And it's kind of a nice thing to do at this time of year because otherwise most of the garden is done. There are a lot less tasks to be accomplishing in the garden unless you're preserving your food, and then you're probably still going at it. This year I'm planting my garlic in a different location than I've ever planted it before. This is a new garden bed. It did have some hostas in it when we moved in 4 years ago, but the soil was really junky, like gravelly, just not doing much for us. So when we redid this walkway, Kim put in some boards to elevate it a little bit. And honestly, I haven't really done anything to the soil here yet. We've put garbage soil here, like from underneath the pavers that we were putting down. And then there's some mulch on top to try to retain moisture this past summer. But it's really crummy soil, as far as I can tell. I didn't get it tested yet. But garlic is really resilient. So if you have a space that has not great soil, I mean, not like solid clay or not pure sand, but just soil that you don't know if it has a ton of nutrients in it, garlic is one of those things that'll probably do okay. If you want to know for sure, you don't want to waste the garlic cloves that you're planting, you can always get a soil test done, but generally speaking, it's really resilient. As are tomatoes, which you are seeing in this bed right now. These tomato plants were suckers that I pruned off of full-size plants in the early summer, and I just rooted them in some water and stuck them in the ground. As you can see, we've had some cold nights. We've had -3 at least, maybe even colder. Plenty of frosts, but this is obviously an incredibly protected area because, I mean, there's a bloom. And these tomatoes are still fine. So I'm going to pick these now and bring them in to finish ripening. It's just remarkable how resilient tomatoes can be. Here's the green tomatoes I salvaged. We'll do something with those. I have 3 big boxes of green tomatoes ripening inside already, so I'm less enthusiastic about dealing with those, but we'll put it to good use. I always cut plants off from their roots when I can because the roots add structure to the soil. They break down in place and feed the soil. And I'm leaving a lot of these little tomatoes here. There's a chance that they're gonna grow baby tomato plants in the spring, but they're easy to weed out. I don't mind so much. I'm pretty passionate about teaching people to grow garlic because it was the first thing that I grew to supply our family with garlic for like the whole year, and then to replant the next year and never had to buy garlic again. I haven't bought garlic at the store in probably a decade. So it was sort of my gateway crop to like growing enough food for our family year round. And it's so easy. And I actually have a article on my website on how to grow it. And in that article, there's a garlic calculator. So you can find out how much garlic you should be planting based on how much garlic you consume in an average week, and then whether or not you want to plant enough for the next year. So with garlic, we plant it in the fall, and then in the spring, you'll see the shoots first, pretty much before anything else starts to come up in the vegetable garden. And then you can harvest the flower stalks from that garlic near the end of June in my climate. And then in July, mid-July usually, is when you pull up those bulbs and eat them. And you're gonna save enough of those bulbs, theoretically, that you can plant them again that coming fall, and you just keep the cycle going. And what I'm planting right now are this summer's garlic cloves. However, I also saved a couple from 2024's harvest. And I'm going to label them and I'm going to plant them because I'm curious to see how they're going to do. They're 2-year-old bulbs going into the ground. They've been in my pantry. When you plant garlic, you take your bulb and you break it apart into individual cloves. It's like step 1, pretty simple. You want to leave as much of the papery coating on as you can because that helps prevent the clove from rotting in the ground. It keeps it safe. And then you just plant them about 3 inches deep, but it is very forgiving. Garlic, you can go shallower, you can go deeper. I plant mine, at least twice the depth of the clove itself, and then I top with mulch. And in this case, I'm going to use leaves because I just went and collected all those leaves from my neighborhood. And you plant them flat side down. That's where the roots are going to come out, that little scabby bit at the bottom, so that the point is sticking up. And that's where the green shoot is going to come out of in the spring. And you can plant them about 4 inches apart. The better quality soil that you're working with, like the more nutrients the soil has in it, the closer together they can go. Or if you're going to top them with compost, the closer together they can go. The spacing is mostly just to make sure that there's enough for them in the soil and they're not competing with each other. And of course, to make sure that there's room for them to grow, but they don't expand that much in size. I still have quite a few more cloves to plant, but that's all I'm going to put in the side garden. Now I have to figure out where I'm going to put the rest. But first, we're going to tack in the bulbs that I have planted along this wall. I laid down a bunch of leaves here and then I covered them with some netting or some mesh and then pinned that mesh down just to keep the leaves from blowing away. I don't want my poor neighbor to have to come out with his leaf blower to clean up my mess. Keeping it pinned down, and then in the spring, obviously that netting can come off. The leaves will be partially decomposed. They'll make a great mulch here and garlic will come right up through them. I have planted garlic under, I don't know, at least 6 inches of leaves before. And by spring, they're broken down enough. The garlic can pop right through. Now, those were not oak leaves. These are just a mix of mostly like Norway maple and some birch. They're things off of the street. Okay, it's mostly all mulched with straw. And now we can head into the backyard and figure out where the heck to plant the rest of this garlic. This is not the most ideal place to be putting my garlic this year. I haven't even finished cleaning out this bed. But honestly, I don't really have another spot unless I want to put it in the ground. And that's because, I mean, there's a bed right there I'd love to put it in, but it needs about 8 inches of soil topped up in the spring. It's the last raised bed that I have never topped up. And this is a challenge when you grow food year round or attempt to. A lot of these beds are always full. The other challenge in deciding where I want to put my garlic is that we have the leek moth as a pest insect in our area. It's an invasive insect and it is really challenging to grow alliums when you've got the leek moth in your area. They burrow into the bulbs of things and then you can't store them. Luckily with garlic, I find that they are easy enough to control if you use like Bacillus thuringiensis, that's BT. It's a bacteria that you can spray on your plants. If you spray it like directly onto that garlic plant, the only caterpillars that are going to come and eat those are the leek moth's larvae. And I think there are different strains of BT as well. And there's one that I have found does work on the larva of the leek moth. And the other thing with garlic, as opposed to something like onions, is that you're pulling the garlic usually around the time when the leek moth is just completing its life cycle. So in most cases, my garlic bulbs are absolutely clean, even if the insect has infiltrated the top part of the plant. If it's burrowed down through the scape and done damage in there, usually the bulb is still fine. If it was something like an onion that was going to stay in the ground for another couple months after that point, then the leek moth larva would be going down into the bulb where it would then try to overwinter, and then your bulb won't store. So garlic is a little bit easier in my experience to still get a good harvest, even if you have leek moths in the area, although they will decimate your scapes if you have too many leek moths, and scapes are a delicious byproduct of growing garlic. So what I tend to do now is keep my garlic under cover. I use insect netting, insect row covers to protect things. That is a pretty easy workaround to avoid the leek moth. The only downside with those insect netting row covers is that every kind I have found available in North America is made with plastic. And I am constantly battling these little threads of plastic that are in my soil. And they're like hairs. And I don't want that. Really don't want it. I've had it tangled around like my parsnip, the base leaves of the parsnip, and it cut them off. Like it's just, I don't want all these little bits of plastic in my garden if I can at all avoid it. So it's a bit of a balancing act for me, give and take. I want to have garlic without the leek moths in it. I don't want to perpetuate the leek moth problem, which can be hard on agriculture, by essentially giving them a free food supply. I want to make it hard for them. So I do tend to cover my garlic. Anyway, I think I'm procrastinating right now because I just don't want to figure out where to plant this garlic. But we're going to go with this end of this year's pepper bed. And I was going to leave these roots in the ground, but if I'm going to plant garlic along here, I'll pull them up. The pepper plants only just died last week, amazingly. So this is a good time to be turning over this bed. Couldn't have planted my garlic here any earlier. Okay, first I'm going to see how many cloves I have left. 19, 20, 21. I'm going to dig channels this time instead of individual holes, because it's easier when I'm doing a longer row of them. Just gonna mark where the end of my garlic is and cover with leaves. I have one more clove. Of course, there wasn't a perfectly even number in the bulbs that I chose. I'm just going to stick it here in the food forest hill. I do that every year, and I see I've got a bunch of perennialized garlic over there. Here's some of the garlic that was from years past when I would just stick a clove randomly because it was left over, and then I forget about it and don't harvest it. This was once the flower of the garlic plants that are here. If you don't harvest the scapes, that's the flower stalk, and you leave the whole plant in the ground, then the scape will eventually open into a flower. On that flower, little garlic bulbils form. These are like mini cloves, not seeds, even though they grow on a flower. Garlic seed is a very rare thing. It's been selected out of most of our garlic because we're clonally propagating it. But interestingly, there are some people doing work to restore seeds, like garlic that produces seeds, which is kind of cool. I'm just gonna randomly put you by this apple tree. Last little garlic. There we go. Oh no. I waited too long to harvest my sweet potatoes. The critters are getting hungry. It's that time of year. Oh, something dug up and ate some of my sweet potatoes. I guess I better do this now. The sweet potatoes this year, it was a really, really late start. My potatoes didn't want to form slips, and then when they finally did, they looked sickly. But I planted them anyway, and then I didn't water them at all. It just wasn't my year for growing sweet potatoes. However, my mom did great growing hers, so luckily there's enough to share. And that's what it's all about. That's why I'm growing extra garlic, more than my family will use. Oh, look at this. Oh boy, not great. It's all breaking. You don't want them to break, ideally, because they don't really store or cure well. They can mold while curing. I've definitely had better sweet potato years in terms of the effort I put in, and obviously then the yield is impacted by your effort and the quality of your plants to start with. Looks like that's it. I mean, honestly, the plants looked dead for most of the summer, so I'm surprised we even got that much. But there's one more spot. This one's really hard to get to, and it got no sunlight this year because this is New England aster, this is the mountain mint. They grew over top of it and shaded it. I knew that would happen eventually and encouraged it, but it did mean my sweet potato vines had no sun. I'm getting tangled. Not much, but it's, you know, it's a couple of meals. I have grown my sweet potatoes in these bins sunken into the ground here because this ground was all wood chip, 100% wood chip. And I thought sweet potatoes would need some soil to grow in, so I put these bins in. But my mom's experiment this year growing her sweet potatoes in the wood chip showed me that they actually can grow well in breaking down wood chip. All right, I think that's probably it for this one too. Not a whole lot, but not nothing. All right, back to the topic of garlic. If you haven't planted garlic, it is not too late, unless maybe you're watching this in January. But at the time of making this video, we're talking like early to mid-November. It's perfect time where I live. Not too cold yet. The ground has not frozen at all. It's a great time to plant your garlic. And with that, it is time to go inside and get ready for my dentist appointment. I am going to be filthy for that appointment yet again. I'm always disgusting when I go out in public. That's the life of a gardener. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please subscribe, give this video a like. I hope that you'll come and grow with us.